Okay guys, Mr. Burns here. I'm going to explain the steps you're going to go through to get your density data using a meter square. So the first thing you're going to need is your map, okay, with your range of your things on it. You need to look at the shaded area. So this is the shaded area we collected. This is the big section of goldenrod. There's a little clump up here, and then there were 1, 2, 3 individual little clumps that I found. Some of them are just even one plant, those little 3 dots right there. So then I went through and I numbered each of the squares that has at least some goldenrod in it, right? So number 4 just has a little bit in the upper corner, but there's at least some there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. Okay? So I have 12 squares of all my squares that have some goldenrod in it. The next thing I went to, if you can see right there, I searched random number generator in Google. And this is what comes up. And the first thing I need to do is I need to change my maximum value to the maximum, to the number of squares that I just numbered off, which was 12. If you number off 13, you'll put 13. If you number off 52, you'll put 52. Nobody's going to put 52. Once you do that, you're going to click Generate. And it's going to generate a number. So the first number is 12. So I'm going to go back to my map. And I'm going to write down the number 12. I'm going to go back to my random number generator. I'm going to click Generate again. And it generated number 1. I'm going to go back and record number 1. And I'm going to do that a third time. Generated number 10. Okay, those are the 3 spots I'm going to go to. When I get out there, I'm going to collect my first sample at spot 12, my second sample up at spot 1, and my third sample at spot 10. And when I get out there, I'll show you how to do that. Alright guys, so here I am at my field site. I'm going to try to describe to you how you will collect your density data. Okay? This is for students who were not in class. Obviously, if you were here, you'll be able to get that information on your own. So, I'm going to start by looking at my table here, or my figure, my diagram of the range, and it matches this section right here. So the first site I'm supposed to go to is site 12, which on my map here is right down here at the end. So at my actual field site, that is all the way down here, near to the end of, so we're looking at it here, it's this area right here, this kind of chunky area where it comes to the end, is like right here. And spot 12 isn't the closest bit of my plants here, but it's the ones just kind of a little farther. It's just kind of this edge that sticks out into here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my meter square, which I've got here, that I'm going to be laying out in spot 12. Now spot 12 really is not a whole lot bigger than a square meter, and so I want to have my meter square land in spot 12. I want it to be in spot 12, but the way I lay it down in there, I want to be sort of random. So I'm going to pause for a second here and then go lay that out. Well, actually, yeah. I'm going to kind of stand back here a little bit so you can get a sense of what I did. So I went down into my spot and found what I thought was spot 12 and then laid out my meter square in that area. So you can see it kind of right in there. Now, my plants are kind of difficult to get my meter square down in. Some of you will have an easier time, but you kind of just got to get it laid out into a nice square shape. You'll see this side's kind of fallen down here, but this is the end of my meter square here. Okay? So now what I need to do is I need to figure out how many plants are within this meter square. And since the goldenrod grows essentially 1 plant per stalk, I just need to count how many stalks are in my site. If your plant grows differently, like it has a bunch of leaves coming out of one thing, you wouldn't count each leaf. You'd try to find at the base and estimate how many individual plants there are. So I would say I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's one coming in here, 8. One down here, 9, 10. There's one little one right in the corner here, 11. And then I'd look really carefully through, and I don't see any others. Did I get that one? Oh, I think I missed that one there. That's number 12. So, that's the data I would record for this site. Okay? Then I'd go back to my chart and I'd say, look, in site 12, interestingly enough, I had 12 individual plants. And then I would go up to site number 1 up here, and I would repeat the same thing. Okay? Some sites you're going to have more, there's going to be a lot, some there's not going to be so many. But you want to get the best count possible. An important thing to remember is, you're not trying to get your meter square to lay down in a place where there's the most possible plants, right? You're trying to get your meter square to lay down in the area that the random number generator gave you and use that estimate, okay? Because it's a random number generator, randomly it will assign you sometimes to a spot with a lot of plants and sometimes to a spot without so many. So, hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions. Okay guys, so this part of the video is kind of a troubleshooting part of the video. For those of you who have a plant that you've selected that is just too densely populated. So let's imagine when we're looking at a desk here, right? And I've put out a bunch of little yellow and red beads. And let's say you were trying to count the population of beads. And you had your meter square and you laid it out. Into your square. Now obviously here we could count all those beads, right? It's a nice controlled area. We could move the beads out of the way. But imagine that these are like blades of grass, right? That's unrealistic. You're not going to be able to count all those. If that entire meter square was filled up with beads like that, it would just be overwhelming. So what do you do in that situation? So here's the solution to that problem. So you're going to take your meter square and you're going to find the centimeter side. Be careful, these are inches, these are centimeters. Okay? Now, you may need to untwist the ends of your meter stick to make this happen. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so I've untwisted some of my edges of my meter stick here, and what I want you to notice that I've done is instead of making a 1 by 1 meter square, I've made a 10 centimeter, so from 90 to 80, by 10 centimeter by, I need to adjust it just a little bit, got bumped by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter square, right? And now, instead of looking at the whole thing, I'm looking at just a small section. And I can count these here, right? Unless you have like ridiculously densely packed things, like you're counting individual leaves on a piece of grass, this should be plenty. You downsize it here, you can pretty easily count the 20 or so, 30 beads that are in there. Then there's some slightly different math. All you're going to do is multiply that value by 100, and that'll tell you how many there would be in a meter square, and then you can do your math like that. Now, if you are in a really tough situation, and there is just super dense, you could downsize to a 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter area, which is going to be a square. I can't even get them to do it here. Which is going to be a square, you know, that's like that size right there. But there needs to be like 20 or 30 of your plant in that area, so it's unlikely that you're going to need to do that. Okay? So that's the most common problem students are going to run into, is if their plants are just too densely populated. That's what you're going to do. You're going to reduce it down to a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter area for each of your meter squares. So you'd do that in site, for me it was site 12, and then I'd go and do that in site 1, and so on. Okay? Don't do that if your whole meter square is going to only have, 20 or 30 or 40 plants in it. Do that if your meter square is going to have 100 plants in it and it's just unrealistic to count them all, or more than 100. Okay? All right, let me know if you have questions.